we create this image in our channels and in our screen names and whatever else we call them, our user identities become who we are online, and that's our imaginary friend. That's who we are, is an imaginary friend to others through the screen, because we don't have to be ourselves. We can be whoever we imagine ourselves to be. And that was kind of the joke
Yeah.
of my project as well. We live in this imaginary land of the internet, and we are, imaginary at this point. We're not living genuinely as we could be. And like even right now, like there's so many opportunities in our community to help others, and people are even afraid to take those opportunities.
Yeah.
I put out a an offer to teach anyone who wants to know how to make bread or basic sauces, because there's not a lot of groceries in the grocery store, and you only
Mm.
need 3 or 4 ingredients, and most of them you probably already have. And if someone needed yeast,
Yeah.
I probably have extra. Like I'm
Mm.
happy to share. And only one person took me up on it, and it's like I can offer this remotely. I can do it through text, through phone calls. We can get on, like Minds has Gathering, but we also have
Yeah.
Hangouts. We have all these face
Where'd
chat
you post
type
this at?
on
Like, how
Facebook,
did you do this? Okay.
on like a community Facebook group.
Yeah.
And then I posted in another
Yeah.
group as well that is meant for women without mothers, where we had abusive mothers, and so we don't really have that support system. So I put it on there as well
Yeah.
because I was like, these are people who might need this. Not everyone knows how to make a roux. And if you know how to make a roux, you can make almost anything. Right,
Yeah.
Sakari? I mean, like, and it's only 3 ingredients, and most people are going to have these ingredients, and if you run out of one of those ingredients, I mean, there's
It's funny actually. It made me think of a story. I saw a friend of mine posted. She's really into like doing all this home baking and stuff, and she didn't have any flour, and she'd obviously been out to the shops to try and get some flour and couldn't get any. Obviously it was like it's becoming one of the scarce items to get. And she
yeah,
actually said, would anybody be willing to trade something for some flour? Because she said, I really want to bake some cookies and I can't, because I can't get any flour. And then she got all these like messages saying, would you trade it for this and that? And like this
yeah,
whole bartering thread appeared from nowhere. Massive thread of people saying, well, I'll give you this and I've got a bit of flour. So she didn't just get like one person, she got like a whole like massive number of people all offering her loads of flour in exchange for other things, which I thought was quite interesting. So I thought that's probably what the way we're going at the moment. It's like a lot more of that sort of thing is going to be happening.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, this is all kind of crazy about like what's going on right now. I think initially, because even myself, I feel this way. There's this kind of initial shock that has kind of like set in, and people kind of like deal it different ways. And the way I've kind of been like formulated in my own head, I feel like kind of like the beginning of a like I've been phrasing it different ways, but there's always this initial period of like when I take like mushrooms, I have like this anxiety, this antsiness. So
Oh
like you
yeah, I know
first
what you
first
mean.
first you have the anticipation, and you're like, okay, we're gonna do the shrooms, and you're all happy, right? And you're like getting everything set, and then you actually eat them, and you're waiting the 30 minutes, 40 minutes for them to
Yeah, you
hit.
feel a bit like anxious, that
Yeah, you feel
butterflies in your
anxious, you have
stomach. Yeah,
anxiety, and then you're like messing around with your hands. You kind of don't know what to do, and you're just like, what the fuck is going to happen? You have like no idea. Like, did you take enough? Did I not take enough? Is it hitting me? Oh my god! Is that real or is that not real? And like nothing has happened yet, but you're just like anticipating, like, holy shit, I'm gonna get blasted into hyperspace or something. And
yeah,
I feel like we're like collectively like there right now, like something. It seemed like one day. I mean, I remember a couple weeks ago when fucking Mike Pence was in charge of the coronavirus here in the United States, I was like, holy shit, this is not going to end well. I think it'll be a good idea if we stock up our freezer with food. And so I was like, nah, we're not gonna need it. Like nothing crazy is gonna happen. And then like every day, slowly, I was like, holy shit, no one knows what to do. Like, what the fuck is gonna happen? And then like slowly but surely, then just one day, it was just like, oh, it's a national emergency. Oh, older people shouldn't go out. And then by the end of the week, it was like, fuck, California shut down. You can't go outside.
Right? God, it went so fast.
It just like flipped a switch, and everybody was kind of like anticipating it, but no one thought it was real. And then it became like a new reality, all because it was just said, and everybody understood. Kind of like there's a whole kind of like this disassociation that's happening too. So like that's like one part, but then there was also too like I also like framed it as like the like reverse of it, of kind of like trying to see like how we all are and how it feels in the air, like this weirdness and this strangeness, and it feels also too kind of like I was writing about this. I don't know if I have the writing with me, but it was something about like I feel like, you know, when you're like sick or you're hungover, and the next day like you feel all right, but then like you don't feel all right, and
There's
you're
that
like,
weird sort of paranoia feeling that you get when you're hungover. Not physical sickness. It's like this weird like paranoia, like when you have a really weird drugs come down and you're like, oh, and everything, it's like you're hypersensitive to everything around you, almost like a hyper aware. And
then you as I related to food. You're like, I haven't ate all day, and I didn't really eat that good last night because I was drinking. I should eat something, and you're trying to convince yourself like, oh, whatever your favorite thing is, like pizza or whatever, like, oh, that sounds good. But then when you sit down and you try to do it, it's like, oh, this is not good. Like it doesn't really even matter what it is. Like normally you would like this thing, but for whatever reason, everything just tastes like flat or stale or like wrong or off. It's because you're off, but then like everything like you're trying to like convince yourself like, oh, everything's cool, everything's this, but you're saying it, but then like when you sit down with it, it's like everything just slightly off. Everything is just slightly tastes like if when you're hungover, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter, like you like this thing, but then you try to ingest it and it's just like, nah, there's something wrong with it. There's something wrong with me. But then it's like something wrong like going on, which is also interesting to see. Like what Rose was saying, I've been on Facebook too more, and in the local groups, right? So the city I technically live in is Monterey Park, but I live like on the edge of East LA and Monterey Park. So anyways, I'm in that group, and then it's so interesting to see how now like those groups. I was in that group prior to what happened, but now that it's happening, there's like that group is finally like alive. But then again, I don't think anybody knows really how to use it either. You know, they're like, oh, just posting like tips. I mean, the most interesting thing is the meme game is like all crazy right now. Memes are everywhere. And some of them are pretty funny. But it's just like there's this strangeness in the air, and we just don't know what exactly is going on, you know? Okay, anyways. It's
it's a very weird situation. My eldest daughter said to me the other day, she said, Mum, it's a bit like you know, like when on telly they do these, like very randomly and occasionally they do these weird little pretend scenarios, like, oh, what
Mhm.
would happen if
This
in
is
the
only
event
a
of a
test.
certain situation, and then they actually get all the people, like the newsreaders and stuff, involved, and as if it was a real thing. And she said, I keep
Yeah.
having to sort of remind myself that this is actually real. It's
Oh
like,
yeah, it's actually
it's not like
happening.
a pretend thing, it's actually happening. It's not like a pretend sort of, let's have a bit of fun and we'll get everybody involved on the telly as if it was really happening. Like a few years back, we've got this soap in here in this country called Coronation Street, and there was a character, and people get so into the characters that they actually believe that they're real. So, you know, like evil characters on the soap get death threats and abuse, you know, things like that, like they're a real, you know, they really are that character. Well, years ago, this character, she got put in prison. She got basically framed for something and got put in prison for fraud, and she didn't do it. Well, obviously her character did. And basically everybody got really sort of obsessed with getting her to be freed from the prison. And there was this massive thing, like all the newsreaders and stuff in the UK were like doing like actual news stories on this character in Coronation Street, like it was a real thing. So like the reality of like whether it was real or soap opera was like really merging, and people were starting to forget that she was just a character. They did it for a bit of a joke and thought it would be a bit of a laugh to sort of, you know, keep this story going. But that story made me think, well, this is kind of like, you know, for a lot of people, I think it's still really sinking in that this is a really weird, surreal situation, that all these countries are locked down, the schools have been locked down, you know, and all this really weird stuff going on. And I just think it's just too much for some people. They just can't. It to me, it really shows up the programming of society, that now something that's happened that is completely outside of the programming, people's brains can't compute. They cannot get away from the previous programming. Do you get what I'm saying? It's really weird.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many layers and so many different things to this. I've kind of been like mentioning this to in a roundabout way to Rose, but in a more formulated way. I've been playing around with this thing. You know, like that meme that I put out with Terrence McKenna. If you can't go outside, go within. Lean into the oblivion. But before that, I was playing with this stuff. Is like, are you all right in your own skin? Have you passed the acid test? But it's I might just leave it as test. Lean into oblivion, and it's like this thing. You know, we go around life, so caught up in the past or the future, all these labels and titles. Oh, this is my job. This is what I do, and then you kind of like go in automatic mode. And you do all this kind of stuff, and kind of like hiding your self is your true like inner self is kind of hidden by this whole masquerade that we all kind of like buy into to a certain degree or not. And then now it's like the music turned off and no one knows what to do. And it's funny to see like it it is in one respect this whole context of this pandemic, right? And it's awful that that there's a new virus that we really don't know how to treat, and that we really don't know what are the repercussions and exactly how it's affecting us. All we know is it's spreading really fast, and and it could really turn into something. It's already kind of turning society on its head, but at the same time, it has woken up in this way to force us to be like, okay, let's just put everything on pause, and that we could do that in like an instant. And like here, it happened so fast. Like California literally just like one day it said like, oh, people shouldn't be out. You should really stay in your homes. And then like the next day is like no one should be out. You should only go out for essential stuff. And then when you think about it, like what is these essential stuff that we need to do? We need food. We need stuff to like clean ourselves. We need then, and that's it. And like we just stay home, and it's like we're supposed to be in lockdown for like 30 days for like a month, and we're doing day 2 already. And it's so funny because I think this is like after we get off this initial anticipation, I think this could have the opportunity, not for everybody, not but for like most to like lean into this oblivion. It can be something really interesting and exciting in a sense that we should naturally, if we had a healthy environment and society, we would, for like a month out of the year, press pause, like a true holiday, not like what we do. Our holidays are all about like consuming, and then we like sometimes even go so overboard that we work more on our days off than we do with work. But like truly just being and focusing on not only like our physical health right here, we're worried about our physical health, but then knowing that it's all tied up into our emotions, into what truly kind of makes what is it that's like interesting. Like, there's no sports to like distract us. There's soon probably going to be no more new episodes of TV shows. So like it's just like it's like what do you do? Like sometimes it's so interesting.
Game Wars.
I've always found it like funny that people their definition of a holiday is actually a load of stress, massive stress.
It's like, oh my god, I gotta do this, I gotta make this, blah blah blah.
I've got the passport, or the traveling.
I gotta go like
the jet lag, and then they go to some
wrestle
hotel
someone in the stores to buy
eat loads of fucking shit and food on their holiday. Lie by a pool in another area of the world, and then after about a week or 2 weeks, they do all the stressful traveling, and then they've got to recover from the holiday. It's like it's complete madness. But like you're saying, Dan, it's like this could be like the real holiday, the period of introspection that people need to have, the true definition of a holiday, almost.
like really reality, like actual physical reality in a form of this virus is forcing us to collectively say, whoa, we need to chill out. Like we just need to press pause and like reevaluate what's going on, because there's something massively wrong right now going on. But
I don't feel like people are doing that. I feel like they're just, sitting at home complaining and
no.
reading memes.
I totally I think that is the initial reaction. And like me,
well, maybe they need time to do that and get it out of their system before they can move on and be productive.
That's
the same thing with, that's the whole point of like universal basic income, is that at first people are going to be lazy as fuck and not want to do anything and whatever, and not be productive members of society in addition to that that check. But eventually they're going to go, there's got to be something I can do that I'll actually enjoy, and that's when all the artists and the other things are going to start showing up, and then people will realize, hey, I really like doing this kind of art. I didn't know I could like make cabinets with it or whatever, like there are ways to use your creative energy to have a career.
And I honestly, we're moving more and more towards this, and this is just like a weird acid test for it, because what I was saying in the beginning is like, even me, who like almost for the past 2 years have been like living this way for a while, even me, when it happened, I initially had this like things were just not like I even my headspace now is not totally in a creative headspace. I'm getting there. Like I'm pushing myself out of this anxiety and anticipation. Much more like everybody else is like kind of just waiting around like what the fuck. But then like now I'm pushing myself into it. But you know, it's initially too like I remember getting people stoned when they don't really get stoned, and they just start like chatting about like all sorts of different things, and I'm just like, dude, just relax. Relax. You don't have to like you don't not constantly have to be like, wow, did you see that though? Or what's this? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, just enjoy it. Like just be. Like this is listen to the music. Watch what we're watching. Like just be here. Like, you know. I remember one time my friend was freaking out on shrooms, right? It was in the initial beginning, and I could just feel him being like all freaking out. And I go sit next to him like, hey, what's up, Gabriel? Like, you're being distant from everybody. Are you okay? I just want to make sure everything's good with you. And he's just like, oh, nah. It's like, I'm worried. And then he starts like mentioning about his like mom and then like his sister and then all this kind of stuff and all this family drama and then like him about like getting a career and all this kind of stuff. And so I just listened to him telling me, and he's just like going a mile a minute, like blah blah, all this kind of stuff that he's worried about. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna let you know that you right now are in Monterey Park, while everybody is here in San Diego on a private beach. We just took an eighth of mushrooms. You're here with your closest friends in the whole entire world, one in the most beautiful places on earth, but yet you're over there in Monterey Park. You're worrying about something that happened in the past or something that might happen in the future. You can't do anything about that right now. Yeah, later when we get back, handle your shit. You know, get right with your parents if it's really like, you know, giving you this anxiety, or, you know, have a heart your sister, or stop being an asshole, or whatever it is. Figure it out then. But for right now, you should be here with us and enjoying this moment, and then worry about it when we get back over there and deal not even worry about it, just deal with it. And it's like, I think if people allow themselves to experience this moment, yes, there's a lot of anxiety and stuff. Like here at my house, my sister's sick. I think a year and a half ago, she had like thyroid cancer. They had to take out her thyroid. So she has an underlying condition. She's on like these stuff to, I think it's called like Synthroid or whatever, to produce some chemical that, because she has no thyroid anymore, and she's sick. She went to the doctor, and it's kind of funny too. She's like, she was living in the East Coast, and she just decided to come back home and stay here for good, and so she like quit her job over there. So she's in between jobs, and like she doesn't really have how coverage right now, and then so it's just like this whole kind of weird swirl that's happening with her right now. And we're kind of like, she's kind of in her own quarantine in room, and we're, you know, I'm like cooking for her, and like we're all kind of pitching to help her out, and she's basically staying in her room. So I mean, this is not to say that I'm ignoring what the actual reality is. It's like literally hitting in my house right now, but at the same time, you know, we deal with it in this moment, whatever's going on at this time, but also to realizing what really matters, what really brings us joy, happiness, like true fulfillment, which is a mixture of pain, you know, a mixture of anxiety, but also to feeling good that I could bring a little bit of comfort and nutrition to my sister who's sick right now, and we're not totally sure what's going on, because everything's all fucked up right now. That was a shit show to try to get her to see a doctor, a shit show to try to get her tested, and they're even like, things are so weird right now here in LA that they decided that they're so behind the ball that they're not even going to test unless you're like in the hospital and you're like in critical condition. But if you just have initial effects, they're not going to waste their time doing that because they need to prioritize because they see this whole like cascade coming. Which I totally understand, but it's also too like, holy shit, you know. But at the same time, it's interesting to get over this initial like, okay, this is happening, this is real, but that doesn't mean. I mean, it puts things in perspective. Like what really, and I like I said, I've done this to my own self-imposed, reevaluating what I really want out of life, you know, and none of that has to do with, at least for me, quote unquote, a job or a career or whatever, only in a loose sense. And it just, if people allow themselves to have this moment, and it doesn't even have to be this like grandiose, like philosophical, introspective thing. It could just be like, let me just stop and breathe, enjoy some food, some quiet time, read a book, really listen to music, you know, whatever it is, even if it's like, it doesn't even matter. There's so array of things. And yeah, I think after a while, some of this initial kind of stuff that we used to distract us will kind of get a little old, and there's going to be like things that we look for, and we could, and I think that's like a moment to like leverage within our own selves, but then also to see if we can leverage that with other people. And even beyond this moment, that's just like how I want to orientate my own life, to leverage moments of like, you know, I just reach out to a couple people, and then whenever something happens, I leverage it. A kind of, I don't even think leveraging is the right word, but you know, just creating moments and time, and like even just me like looking at this challenge and thinking about it, telling Rose a little bit, like I find it interesting to use my skills as a cook to be like, okay, how do I use everything I have right now if I truly cannot go out for 30 days? And like, let me prep things, let me like have things easier for me, because you know, I have like stock that's frozen. I have like all this kind of like coordinating, using the fresh veggies that I have right now and not like wasting everything, which means also that I have to like freeze things, which I don't particularly like. But and like, what if I get sick and then the family needs to eat and I shouldn't be really cooking everything? So like, let me like make sure there's enough variety of meals in the freezer for like 2 weeks or whatever. Like I think we're at like 2 weeks, and then we could like survive the next week if that. But you know, just using this like, okay, like let me make my prep list. Let me have my oh shit backups. It's like, oh yeah, let me do these little things. Let me take you know, do inventory and see what's up. But you know, it's, no one knows what's going to happen, and I think also to get like so sucked in, like it is so right now that there's this weird narrative or agenda that we're so wrapped up into. This is the only true gift Donald Trump has. He has his gift of sucking up attention and like using it in such this fucking magical spell way, and it doesn't matter what side you're on, he sucks you into that attention and distracts you from the moment. He creates these like little illusion bubbles that everybody like fights over, forgetting the actual emperor has no clothes. And like, and that all of this is a house of cards. Like, it's so weird that if we all just collectively decide not to play in this economic game and we just like stop, that's it. Like, we're literally doing that right now. And like, we could, Meg was saying, we could barter within ourselves. We could like reorganize ourselves to just deal locally and to interact with our our loved ones and even our imaginary friends. And it's so funny because I think, and I'm already seeing it, but I have yet to really see anybody the way I think it can be done. And it's interesting that all this kind of crazy stuff that I've been trying to do puts me in this weird nexus to be able to start to shift things in this way. And like what me and Meg were talking about, I think it was earlier today, that you never really notice. And it's funny because things that accelerate so much that now you could see this whole like shift and change in almost in real time. It's almost like rendering in real time, but most of the time you don't see how the course of your own life changes until like afterwards. Like, oh, that bad relationship made all this like series of events to make me go into this path, or me arbitrarily choosing this made me realize something that made me choose that. Like if I decided, like to stay in school and then get married to my girlfriend at the time, then like my whole life would have been different. But me making that decision of like doing that changed my whole course to this side. I would have been a whole different other person at that time, or I would have been done this and that. And I think this is like a chance to like really prototype this near future of like, this future work, like what we've been doing and everything. It just stopped, and just one day we just said, okay, we're just going to put this on pause. And I think if we use this time to think, like I've already kind of done this with my own self, but like other people to like think, like, you know what, like let's be a little bit more self-sufficient. Let's be a little bit more aware of our own health. We could use the internet to have to create things, to actually have things that are more culturally, spiritually nutritious, instead of just kind of consuming mindless advertisements. You mean we could use this in a way to form each other directly, but not only just to form each other directly, have fun and create and get to this space. And I've been slowly introducing what we did with the Minds poetry group into like Facebook, and like kind of like slowly focusing my magic to see if I could like send these digital messages in a bottle out there to interact with anybody lost, and finding any of the others on Facebook that want to play. And I mentioned this to Rose, but the whole thing with Douglas Rushkoff, and it's so weird. Everything's up for grabs. Everything seems possible, and I think it's the time to lean into oblivion, lean into this moment, no matter how strange it gets, no matter how chaotic it gets, no matter how worrisome and troublesome it can be, that we lean into it and be in this moment and in this time. That I think I almost like 100% believe in this, even prior to this moment, that if you're all right in your own skin, then it doesn't matter at all what is happening around you. And then that you will be able to have like this full faith in your own will, in your own being, to be able to handle anything that comes. And that means being fully in and aware of yourself and everything going around. And it's a weird balance and thing, but that's like that in my own mind, however naive it may be, but I think that's the actual work that is to be done in our brief moment in this version of reality. Is
It's like
to
the Earth is like a global reset. Like the planet is stopped. I saw this,
it's
obviously
a definitely control alt delete moment for all of human society. It's like, okay, society needs a whole reset because we cannot render this information that is coming. There's too many people and we don't know what the fuck is going on. We need
I
to
saw this like meme
restart the operating
earlier
system
today,
for
and
her.
it said something like, I can't remember what it said exactly word for word, but it was like planet Earth is closed for repairs.
Yeah.
It's like stopped. It's basically just closed, just temporarily to repair. The animals are having a fucking field day. They're coming out, swimming around and doing stuff because everybody's. I saw this post on Facebook in Venice that apparently, whether it's true or not, you never know what's true and what isn't.
Yeah, you never know what's true or not.
The dolphins, dolphins were swimming around in Venice, because none of the pollution and the gondolas or anything were around. Nothing was happening due to the virus. So they'd all come out and they were like, "Great, we can enjoy the planet now because all the polluting humans are fucked off temporarily, so we can come out and just have a laugh." And I thought, well, that kind of says it all. The animals have kind of taken a second place to us on the planet for a long time. They've not really got a chance to be equal, that they kind of exist on the earth equally to us, to obviously that sounds a bit cosmic. So they're kind of coming out and enjoying
it. They have to exist on the fringes of human society, right?
Yeah.
They have to oh shit, we gotta worry about these fucking stupid humans. They're always causing trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
or polluting our habitat. We can, we've noticed a change in the.
Hey, all the humans are outside. We can come out and play and enjoy life for a little bit. But I guess I want to kind of go back to this, and it kind of wraps up. I think we did it kind of backwards, but it's all good because everything should unfold organically and what it is about. But this is why it's so important, I think, to have this frame of Team Human and to kind of go back to this source material of Doug. And I wanted to read the beginning of the Team Human book because I think it's so timely for this moment. And so, anyways, it starts off like this. Anonymous technologies, runaway markets, and weaponized media has seemed to overturn civil society, paralyze our ability to think constructively, connect meaningfully, and act purposefully. It feels as if civilization itself were on the brink. Actually, it doesn't feel that way. It seems like it actually is right now in this moment. And that we lack the collective will and coordination necessary to address the issue's vital importance to the very survival of our species. It doesn't have to be this way. And just that how that ends right there, it doesn't have to be this way. I hope, if anything could come out of this moment, is that at least a few more people could realize that sentiment, that it doesn't need to be this way. Everyone is asking how we got here, as if it was random slide towards collective incoherence or disempowerment. It is not. The reason we are in our current predicament, an anti-human agenda embedded in our technology, in our markets, in our major cultural institutions, from education and religion to civics and media. It has turned them from forces of human connection and expression to one of isolation and repression. By unearthing this agenda, we render ourselves capable of transcending its paralyzing effects, reconnecting to one another, remaking society towards human ends rather than the end of humans. And I think, it's funny that in this weird, absurd moment of time that we're in, that us forcing ourselves for our physical health to be isolated, that maybe in a paradoxical way we could return to getting back within ourselves, but also to using these moments and not using these technologies and the internet as distracting or isolating us anymore, but we're going to get so bored that we're going to use it like, hey, we could use this to connect with each other. We could use this to actually be social with each other instead of just we use social media as advertisement. It's not a social networking, but like for the first time, some of these groups that were just like dead are actually being used to share information. And I see like little inklings of actually being social. And that has been like always, I guess, a mandate for Imaginarium.
It's almost like through this period of being forced to be separate from one another because we're all in lockdown and we've got to self-isolate and everything, when this whole scare passes, it will make people appreciate the whole thing of actually being together in real time, as opposed to just communicating on social media. So my guess is people will start wanting to have like a big reunions and parties because this period has ended, and they go, right, we can all be together now because the main part of the danger has passed. So it could actually bring people together physically in real time because they'll appreciate that more.
I think too, just like it's natural for us going about our lives that we take things for granted, and it's not until absence makes the heart grow fonder or whatever, or when things like this happen, and I don't think this has ever happened, at least as far as in modern time, like this scale, like happening in this dramatic way, but that it puts things in perspective. Like the minute it kind of like happened, or as it was happening, my first initial thoughts was to my direct like family, and of course like my grandma, and then like a couple of my aunts that are older and kind of sick, to make sure that they're all right and to make sure they're good. Like it's so funny that it just kind of like happened. Like I really don't, even though I know I could be better at this, but for the most part, I don't have much regrets. I don't take much things for granted. I don't have much, but that's a little bit by design for me to really be like, I've been thinking this way for at least 2 years. Like, what is actually necessary for me as wanting to be a fully human being? What do I need, and constantly focusing on that like necessity, and not of this like stressful illusion of like, oh, I need to get this, I need to do that, I need to do this. Do I really want to do that? Like, why am I so stressed out about this? Like, why am I like turning on this hamster wheel? Like, do I really want all this stuff? Do I really need all this stress? Does this even really matter? And what does really matter to me? And so that means, at least once a week I see my grandma. So like, it's as when this happened, I don't want to like go visit her because she's old and I want to make sure that she stays safe. But we call her, and I saw her, just before the day it happened when California locked down. So I see her so frequently, and I don't take her for granted, that I'm not like, oh, I wish I saw her. And I had this weird moment with my aunt, So it was raining here, and this was just before I think I remember my aunt saying that she got that call that day from uh from her health insurance company telling her that she shouldn't go outside. As probably like it was like a day or two before the shutdown, or maybe the shutdown happened that night. Anyways, she calls and she says that she has a leak in her roof, and they're older and she has arthritis. They have a lot of different problems. My aunt and my uncle, and they asked if I could go down and help them move some furniture and do some stuff for them because my uncle was probably going to throw out his back. And so I go over there and I see them, and I was a little worried. And so like I help him out, and then I remember when we're about to leave, I say bye to my aunt, and I hug her and tell her I love her and everything. And then I went out and I was like, oh man, should I really have hugged her? Should I really done that? And I was like, oh, I think everything's safe. But then the opposite question came into my head. It was like, what if, maybe that moment didn't happen, but what if something does happen in the near future? I think I would have, and I don't know the answer to this. And I think you just have to be all right with whatever it is. But would I regret it more not actually hugging her and saying I loved her if God forbid something happens to her and she does not make it through this time, And this is like all these like weird little things of what actually matters to you. But at the same time, if you don't take these relationships and these things that actually matter to you for granted, I think whatever does happen, you can square those circles within yourself, and that you can be all right within your own skin, and you can be all right with your own relationships. And really, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And besides the physical people, and then my friend Rosie, who kind of lives far, and I kind of hit her up and said make sure she's all right, and kind of joked around. Then right after that, my next two thoughts were you guys, and that you guys are like as real as them, and that this already enrichment that we have of this weird disembodied connection is I think this weird space that hopefully more and more people can discover. And I think it's that this is this natural inclination. We have this natural innate thing about being connected to another, like little kids want to constantly touch you and constantly be like connected, like physically connected to you. And that maybe your kid was like sensing this thing that there's this new space in hyperspace in this internet. There's the Imaginarium space in which you can have a new form of connection, and it is as interesting and as real as these physical connections. It's different. It's uh, a little bit more fluid and a little bit more fleeting, but there is this whole area that we are so like subconscious about, but that we can have this interesting whole other experience, this whole other depth to reality. But it's not even, I keep on more and more not liking it to like some other. I think that is so core and natural to actual um existence and experience and life that we have eluded ourselves with these false narratives and this programming that we can't even a lot of times identify the real. We view the real, the core essence of ourselves as something other, when it's actually no, it's more closer to the core of our being. It's not this higher consciousness. No, it's just shred, not no filter, actual existence. And the other stuff is the mask, is this noise that we put on top of it, the clothing, the colors and everything like that. But the what I refer to the heartbeat of the universe is this strange thing that is what can really be kind of leveraged, explored. There was this whole thing that I had about if I could find it real quick. And it's something about like artists and writing and stuff like that. And so this comes from this article that Douglas wrote about Genesis Peorage from Psychic TV. He recently passed away, but anyways, he's revisiting this article, and he says, if you're going to be an artist, a writer, or a musician, or a writer, you got to navigate through some treacherous zones. If you're not traversing new territories, or at least forgotten territories, then why write instead of reading? And many of these regions can be culturally, intellectually, physically, and psychically challenging. Disorientation can be avoided. It is the rule. You can't avoid the disorientation. It is the rule. Panic is the one thing you have to watch out for. And these weird little areas can be and should be explored. And I mean, I don't think it's I don't have the words to describe, but I know you both have experienced it. And even when I was telling like Doug about what I wanted to do, I was just like, I just need to show you. Like, I don't want to talk about it. I want to do it. And what doing it is, yeah, part of the end product is the videos. But the actual process is being open and vulnerable and willing to play in this disembodied way with you too, and with other people that are open enough to be in that space.
I feel like that's really hard to find.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people talk the talk, and I mean, they can talk the talk for a good long while, but when it really comes down to it, they're afraid to open up and be vulnerable and really show who they are inside. And maybe they don't know who that is. Maybe
Yeah.
it's a self-awareness issue, and I feel like doing what we do is going to bring more self-awareness. But if you're afraid to know who you are, when it gets dark out, then you're not going to be motivated to do what we do.
And this kind of goes into this other thing I was talking to Meg about. Remember, I was saying, "Oh, I'm not really good at. I'll pour at this thing," and we're kind of talking about, "Oh, who's going to show up today?" I'm like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, and then she's like, what do you mean you're poor at what? I mean, I guess event organizing. I don't know. And like, or even like promoting our content. And for me, the content, even though I like it, I enjoy it. There's like little magical spells and artwork that I actually view later, and I'm like, oh my god, that was so cool. And even recently, I reminded an old open mic night, and censorship sucks says, oh my god, thanks for replaying that. I was so cool to like re-experience that moment. And I'm like, yeah. And so like, it's all trying to capture these moments, right? But I'm always chasing another moment. I'm always chasing another thing
There's
to
always
wrestle.
something new coming.
And
there's so much right now.
Yeah. And so I'm not too concerned about everybody viewing our shit or viewing my work. I'm trying to create another moment, another connection, and wrestle down this other feeling, and doing this other thing. So I don't really, I don't care in the best possible sense. If I'm doing these videos and creating this stuff, and it's not even about the actual quote unquote content or the art. It's more of these creating these experiences, and I think having this space, then it's a byproduct of this being more human, being more of myself, and honestly engaging with people. And it doesn't even matter how many people I engage with, that in this honest way, that's what makes it real, just as real as my experiences in actual reality, that with my friends that I hear, with all my loved ones. Like, that's why my mind went to like, I hope everything's good on your side of the planet and everything's good with you guys, just as much as I was worried about like my grandma. Well, you guys, actually grandma comes first and then you guys, but but my mind went to there. And even in that moment, like, all of the nonsense and noise goes away. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, this is the things that actually are meaningful, and because I'm worried about them and concerned about them, like, my heartstrings get pulled to like my actual loved ones in physical reality, and then in the imaginarium space, right? And but to also too, in the other respect, and I know I don't have to say this, but I want to kind of like express this for future future others that might come into this space, is not in a naive way that I pursue this, because part of being all right in your own skin, at least for me, is to know when it's worth it for your own self to be open to other people. Like, in one respect, I am, as much as anybody here on mine's, open and inviting to people, but I am not gonna waste my time if they're not there. If I don't feel they are where I'm at, and I'm not gonna like.
You can only give as much as they give.
Yeah, and
I really had to learn that.
And I want more people, and there's certain people that I do kind of miss interacting with on this kind of like level, like ghost spiders or whatever. But I'm all right. I'm all right with them doing what they got to do. Like, I always have this thing, is it's still the fucking internet. Like, handle your shit. Like, when I tell Rose, hey, what's up? How are you doing? I don't know. Well, you better fucking find out. Better get your shit together, homie. Get your shit together. No, but and so, like, at the same time, I think, and no, of course, I don't have it perfect or anything, and no one does perfectly beautiful. What is it? Beautifully imperfect. but
Yeah.
you know, there is something to, and I don't even want to institutionalize it, but I think just us being um, authentic and creating this culture of being authentic, because you know, yeah, eh, the distractions, the drama, and all this other stuff could easily poison this space that I want. And I've seen it come and go in all sorts of small fashions that can only get amplified more. But there's something interesting. One time, what Doug said was that humanity happens peer to peer, and I think in this way, these small little, and I think they build upon each other too, because you know, even Elliot in his small little way of doing the post, and he creates this whole other like take on something that I go wild with, and I don't need much to go wild with, but I need this kind of like, I'm not so much concerned with myself in a lot of ways, but I'm
Yeah.
concerned with all these other like perspectives and perceptions and these
Yeah.
other things that when I see it, I'm like, oh, that's so good. Even if I don't necessarily totally agree with it, I still find it interesting. And of course,
Yeah,
you only
and
have
that's kind
you
of
know,
like a point in maturity that you reach, where you're no longer looking at yourself and your own thoughts and acting on your like how you would feel and how you would think. And you begin to seek out not just what you think other people would think, but you really want to know, what does
yeah.
this person think? What do these groups think? What does that mean? What does that mean to someone else? What does it mean to those people? Like there, and it just widens you up in a way that I think only psychedelics can really make you widen up. I don't think it's like a natural thing. I think it's something that, like, when you take psychedelics, the way that it activates the chemicals in your brain, it triggers these
No, it goes to
floods.
factory reset. That's
Yeah,
the.
it really does, and it's so amazing.
But more even without the whole
You hide
psychedelic
all the
thing.
tissues.
So earlier I was referencing this thing and I found it right now. What I was talking about, but we are grounded in this moment within this space and time. Footnotes to the timeline of history. What is it that we want to do with this one last song? And it's like we're it. I don't know if because it was like pre-programmed into us, but it feels like we're always on this like, and to some extent there's this whole spiritual kind of shamanic way of like living, where that death stalks us all, and that we should live every moment uh, being all right with our own death and the own oblivion of everything. And but in this broader sense, footnotes to the timeline of history. What is it that we want to do with this one last song? Like, what are we gonna do with this moment while we're here listening to this? Like, we really have put the noise on pause, and if we really allow it, we could finally hear, like, literally feel and hear the heartbeat of the universe. And what are we gonna do with this the one last song? And
I
if
had this thought the other day that, what if the death process was just like a fluid motion where you just move into you shift into a new reality and you just carry on as if nothing had ever happened. Because obviously, people tend to think that death is going to be like an ending, like in terms of linear process. You go through life, it's like a series of events, and then there's going to be this kind of ending, or something's going to happen, or, depending on what your belief system is. Some people believe that when you die, nothing happens, and you wouldn't actually know anything after you died. Other people think you might go into some other world or something. But I was thinking, what if death was just like this fluid process where you never even knew that it had taken place? And if that was the case, how would people live their lives out? Would they have to conceive of this thing of, I need to live my life to the fullest because potentially this day could be my last day? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
If it was just this, there might be this thing where, in terms of consciousness, we don't really know about how, whether or not consciousness exists beyond the physical body. My thought is, if it did exist beyond the physical body, would we just shift into this death process and then just carry on a life in a different state of consciousness? So we wouldn't necessarily know that any physical death had taken place. And if people knew that in advance, how would they live their lives then? Would they be pondering this thing of, I need to do things in a certain way because this might be my last opportunity to do something? This is something that came to my mind quite recently because, I think because of everything going on.
It really depends on whether you believe in some sort of reincarnation or not. Some people, they justify it like suicide from the perspective of, reincarnation and, well, this life was shitty, so I can just go and try to live another one. And I like to think
or escape this one.
Yeah, I like to think that if you take your own life, this is how I kind of stay alive, but if you take your own life, you kind of get stuck in this in between until the time you've passed away anyhow. And while you're in that in between, you're forced to think about your life and how you wasted it, because that's basically the conclusion you come to is, and eventually you have to move on from, that despair and realize that, you lived your life the best you could, and you have to give yourself some form of acceptance and love.
So, like, you'd be in a state of limbo until your actual blueprinted time to die came around.
You know what's interesting about all this? So the first part is that, well, one, I kind of have this basic philosophy that I stole from Robert Anton Wilson to not really believe anything, but I have my suspicions. And one of my heavy suspicions about things, and I don't think anybody knows any of this for sure, but a heavy suspicion that I have is that we are currently in the in-between, like right now. But besides that, there's something interesting that I was messing around with, playing around with, and it comes from this recent monologue that Doug did about his friend that passed away, right? And with Genesis, with Tal, Doug was that he was trying to free himself from all sorts of labels and this and that, even DNA itself. And he would say that DNA is a virus from outer space that entraps immortal beings into these different genders and species. And this whole, I've always liked the whole Hindu mythology that there is just this whole infinite, or what I like from Allen Ginsberg, the whole thing about a beauty, like this eternal beauty. The main thing in the universe is nameless, but so I give it the name beauty, right? That thing, the like just straight consciousness, void energy, the every wind is what it is, and these are just different reflections of that. And that even going more towards the individual self and all my own weird explorations of this. This one time early on in my psychedelic career, I took a bunch of shrooms, right? And then like our friend threw this party and we were supposed to have the house to ourselves, and things get a little crazy and my friends kind of freak out and all this kind of stuff. But then later this party breaks out and we're coming down, and I'm kind of being a little bit more back to reality, and I'm still all shroomed out, but I'm not like a wild animal or anything anymore. And so I'm interacting with the people, and I'm just kind of like feeling all weird interacting with them. And we're not 21 yet, most of us. And I don't know why everybody was at this party, and this one guy was like, "Oh, does anybody know where we could get some alcohol?" This and that. And I just said it. I'm like, "Oh yeah, I could get alcohol. Don't worry about it. This and that." And then I'm not 21 yet, and I just blurted out that I could do it. So I get in this car with this guy, and he's kind of for lack of a better word, gangster. He's more rough than me, and more hood. And then so I don't really even know this guy. Get in the car, and he's like bumping some crazy music, and I hear I'm a head full of shrooms with this random guy that I kind of don't really know, telling him that I could get alcohol. And then the whole time I'm trying to act normal, right? I think physically outward I'm acting normal, but in my head I'm like, oh my god, what the fuck am I doing? What are you doing, Daniel? What about you're on mushrooms? You're gonna go inside and buy alcohol, and everybody's gonna know you're on fucking mushrooms. They're gonna call the cops, and you go to jail, and you're on drugs. You're on the illegal drugs. You can't just be out in public just like, oh, I don't even have an ID. I'm gonna go buy alcohol. Oh.
Sounds like that movie Superbad.
Yeah, and so I'm like, but then I'm like, okay, no, you got this. Pull yourself together. No one knows you're on mushrooms. Your will shall be done, and you could do anything, and you could get yourself out of any situation. And then I'm just thinking, so my head is all like this ocean of possibilities of all these different timelines, like just like blipping in and out of my inner mind, and have this one thing. Well, if I do get stopped in 7-Eleven when we buy the alcohol, and they say you can't buy the alcohol, I'll just run out. And then the serious situation, I run out, the fucking cops see me, they shoot me, and then I die. But not only do I have that thought, but there was like a whole sequence of like this vision dream that happens in my mind's eye of me playing this possibility of my timeline of me getting it, buying the alcohol. They're telling me no, and there's cops outside while I run away, and they shoot me, and I die. Like, it wasn't just like a intellectual experiment. Like, it was an actual like sequence that played out, like a dream sequence that played out in my head. And what happened was that I got shot, and then I woke up like in another like life, I guess. Like, death led to me like waking up from this dream of this in between that I was in right now, and later, me analyzing it, it was like, oh, that's kind of like a weird thing, but it connects later, like I would say 3 months after this experience, and me kind of like pushing it to the side, and maybe every once in a while analyzing it or whatever. And then 3 months later, I go to this, I go up north to the Bay Area, and I go party at this college, and we take mushrooms. I don't think that night we took mushrooms, but we got mushrooms, and then we were just smoking weed. And then my friends, there's this girl next to my friend's dorm. She's like, oh, you guys smoke? And we're like, yeah. And then so I was rolling up a blunt for them, and like this kind of like weird little party breaks out, and they were watching this movie, and I'm kind of like half paying attention to the movie, and then rolling up the joint, and we're smoking and just like getting to know each other. I'm like, hey, what movie is this? She's like, oh, you never seen this movie? It's called Waking Life. It's like, nah, I never seen this movie, but there's like some kind of weird deja vu feeling that I started having. And like my tension kept on going there. And I start watching this movie, right? The whole movie is about this kid dying and him constantly waking up in a dream within a dream, and he doesn't realize that he actually died. Like, he thought it was a dream, and he woke up from his dream, and he's slowly, as he keeps waking up, a dream within a dream and having all these weird dream sequences, he's slowly losing the sense of himself until he finally like realizes that he actually died. Then he floats away into like the abyss or whatever. But at the same time, my heavy suspicion is that this version, this self, Daniel, that I refer to as Daniel, he's only of this body and in this moment, and everything accumulates into making this self that is Daniel. That dies, that gets obliterated. That does not pass go. That does not continue on. But the essence, like literally, we know that energy doesn't get destroyed, only recombines. So the essence, our consciousness, our energy gets recombined into other things. And what I have experienced in my own weird stuff, and you can know this for sure, you should take it with a grain of salt, but there's a heavy intuitive suspicion that to get connected to what I refer to the heartbeat of the universe, that eternal beauty, is that you have to slowly dissolve all these trappings of the self, and then you get to these weirder areas of awareness and consciousness that maybe are more core to our being than we realize, to see and feel that oneness, that going back to the source or whatever it is. But in the only path towards that is to deconstruct the self, deconstruct all of these trappings in this in between that we have built around us to keep us tethered to this moment, this brief little blip in this overall oneness of everything. And I mean, there's the whole like Tibetan Book of the Dead where they talk about the bardos and this and that, and it's like a whole process of like, you know, you, whether you consciously or subconsciously choose these different like levels of the realms basing on how much work you have done to dissolve the ego or the self, right? And then that depends, like, okay, do you want to go back to source? I mean, there's been many moments in my weird little experiments with my own awareness, perception, and consciousness where I've been presented with this experience of, okay, do you want to go back to the source? Do you want to go back to that light? And I'm still tethered to different things, like my loved ones, of still having this nagging feeling that I want to still do some stuff here and express stuff and experience a little bit more of the stuff. But that when you're in this real disembodied self, it's not in any real sense the Daniel the shell of this programming of the self Daniel that I carry around me to function in this everyday life, this waking life. But that other form is timeless, nameless, beyond the concepts and everything. That essence always remains and always is here, and that's my sneaking suspicion. But that there are probably multiple shells of selves that you can experience, But I think it's so hard, and I think it's just natural for the easement of things that you have, just like in a dream, you have a fading memory of that. And I think the more interesting thing is to be in any given experience, to be fully in a dream too, because it's real as you're actually experiencing, just like reality in your waking life is as real as you're experiencing it. And this moment of us talking is real as we experience it, even though later when we end this talk, it collapses and it no longer exists, even though it's still like this fading memory back there. I mean, to
It's like
some extent,
life
I
is
don't
a
even know if you
series of
guys are
deaths,
real.
isn't it?
I know that
Like
I'm not real.
you experience, like there's a series of like multiple deaths we experience in life, when we go from one way of being to
Oh,
another. So we
have you guys
finish one
seen?
phase or one cycle and then go to
Have
another.
you have you guys seen that movie, The Fountain?
No, I've
It's
not
a pretty
seen
good.
that.
It's a pretty good movie. Check it out, The Fountain. But anyways, so the whole thing is about this scientist, and his wife has cancer, and he's doing research on cancer, and so he's like trying to save her, right? And there's a whole bunch of series of like flashbacks and visions that happen within this movie. It's not linear storytelling. It's all weird. So you kind of have to like piece it together. It's
Kind of all
really,
over the place.
yeah, you're really interesting. But the core of it, and one of the main tensions is he's trying to save his wife, right? And he's trying to cure cancer. And he has this discovery of like this plant from like I think it's Peru, Guatemala, or somewhere in South America that like makes this chimp younger, but it doesn't kill the cancer, but it makes him younger. So it's like eternal life kind of like thing, life expanding substance. And everybody's all excited about it, and he's pissed, like, "Oh my god! Like, it didn't kill the cancer. Like, we gotta try something else." It's like, no, and the rest of the team wants to do this research on that, and then he kind of has this breakdown where he wants to save his wife, and the like his mentor, this older lady, kind of tells him, basically gets to the crux of the thing is like, your wife's dying in the hospital, and you're here trying to save her, but you're really not being with her. This could be her last moments, and you don't want to accept like the fact that she's gonna die, so you're hiding out in your work, but you're really, she's already kind of dying or dead to you because you're not using the time that you have being with her. There's like this one little message of like, you're doing all this to save her, but you're not, but she's right here still with you, and not living and experience her in that moment, in this moment that you still have with her, however fleeting it is. And it goes through this whole sequence of like this timeless moment, the tree of life, and him kind of chasing her through multiple lives, through all of time, back when the conquistadors were in South America with the Mayans trying to chase down the tree of life. And like there's different lives folded into his own life, and his search of his of the loss of his I guess his soulmate in quotes, breaks open this kind of like weird thing, but I think that's so interesting, which is so true to a lot of people, and even to us to various degrees, that we get so caught up on different things that we forget to actually experience our loved ones or whatever in that given moment. We're so caught up, oh, we need to do this or that, that even though we're there with our loved ones, that sometimes we're not truly there experiencing them. And that's kind of all, I mean, kind of like, circling back to what we're talking about, is that all we have is this timeless moment. and that a lot of the stuff that our attention is pulled in all sorts of different ways distracts us and keeps us away from what we really need to nourish our soul, to nourish our being, to become more all right in our skin, to be able to find the others and be open enough to create the weird. And maybe next week we could get into the whole thing about weird and it being this whole other different concept that opens it up to something strange and different of like how we modernly use the word weird to the root word of weird, which is all dancing around the same thing that I'm talking about, you know?
Yeah. I'm so tired.
Yeah, no.
Holy, not as
Definitely.
tired as Nikki.
I'm all right, actually. Weirdly, I've been I've been seeing all these posts of people going, "Oh, hope I'm not ill. I'm feeling a bit strange." I think a
Probably
lot
just
of
from
it's
being inside so much.
psychological. People are.
Yeah.
There's this whole thing.
Yeah,
People are being
placebo
bombarded
effect.
with information. They're. I think a lot of illnesses are psychosomatic, but weirdly, and it's funny. I said to Dan earlier, when things get really weird, I function really well in weird scenarios. I always have done. So I'm like strangely not. I'm okay actually. I'm not too bad. In fact, what the time here now is, it's not too bad actually. It's 1:10 in the morning, so it's not like we're not talking 3 o'clock in the morning or anything.
Yeah.
But
But
it,
I think also too on a very
I'm
grounded
okay.
in a very grounded way, we need to be more aware of like our physical well-being, our mental well-being,
Yeah.
our spiritual cultural well-being, you know? Like
Yeah.
I started
I
meds today that just knocked me out.
yeah, I think we're more hyper aware of like, okay, I've been doing this even before this, but I'm even more heightened about it. Like, okay, now why do I feel tired? Is it because I've been up since 4 o'clock in the morning? Maybe that's probably why it is. So, oh, I got enough sleep, and like do it like
Yeah, but we're
do
also
an
being
inventory of myself.
bombarded by
Like, did I make sure that I eat?
like
Should I make sure I like get more citrus in me or something? And just like kind of like, okay, we need to be. I mean, that's one of these newer messages or ongoing theme that I get when I drink my mescaline tea is like being within the body and like, oh my god, am I? A lot of times I'm more in Imaginarium and I forget about being in my body. I'm like, oh, I could walk a little bit more. I could exercise a little bit more. I could chill on eating so much, or all that other stuff. Of course, there's always more
yeah, but we're
progress to
living
do.
through some exceptional there's an
Oh hell yeah!
exceptional thing going on here at the moment that is causing global stress, and I think that
Oh yeah,
kind of affects everybody. That
and
drains
I think
everybody's life force to some extent.
is through. Like we can't ignore the stress and the anxiety. Like we gotta like fully feel it, and everybody kind of deals with it a different way, and hopefully you're dealing with it in a way that gets you past it. So if that means sometimes just vegging out and kind of comfort eating or being distracted doing this that to an extent.
Yeah,
You know what I mean everybody has their own process to get themselves through it, and I think the saddest part is that some people maybe don't even realize it, but we just gotta lean into oblivion, just fucking annihilate everything.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's. I've seen a lot of positivity in people that, they're saying, "Oh,
Yeah.
I've suddenly got this time that, I can write this book and I can do these things that I can
Yeah.
explore things
Learn.
that I never had the time to do. I'm now being forced into a situation where I
To
can actually do these
fiction.
positive things, and
Yeah.
I think that's good.
I think
I think
it's very important. And so there's this other thing that I guess we could probably like end it on and wrap things up. But I was reading that article, and so this is something Genesis says. Well, you really end up doing this. You surrender to the idea of oblivion. At a certain point, you have to wipe absolutely clean every preconception that was given to you, both by the senses and by the culture, the data stream, as you talked about. You have to actually, at some point, dismiss it totally. Then you can start to make choices about what you wish to allow back in. And I think this is the moment that we're in. We have to we have an opportunity to absolutely clean every preconception that was given to us, both by our senses and by our culture. Actually make, at some point, dismiss it all totally so we can start to make choices of what we wish to allow back in. We've been affected by a lot of cultural viruses. You know what I mean? And that's what I found so fascinating about this other article where Doug goes into Team Human is a media virus, a collective signal, a neurolinguistical reprogramming. The other books that I've written are information. They are data. I created a narrative around them. I'm telling stories about things. Team Human is almost a piece of literary software. It's meant to as an experience through which people can embed their brains with a program that will help them resist manipulative algorithms, platforms, and systems that are out there. It's a piece of cultural medicine. Not only do we need to worry about our physical health right now, but we need to worry about taking some cultural medicine and start to heal our soul and to get back into what it means to be fully us, all right in our own skin, and this time and in this moment.